Hello, hello. So we'll just.
Can you hear me? We gotta make sure you hear me. Okay.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. So we'll just pretend like it's just you and I talking, and then they can just listen in. Okay, awesome. So
get the real details. Right?
Exactly. So I think a great way to start off would be, hence this amazing introduction and your fascinating career thus far. If you could just give us some interesting, advice about your professional background, given all your multiple roles and experiences.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to do that really quickly. I think fascinating is a good word. The other thing that's fascinating is that this phenomenon with the empty front row, I speak all over the country. Always happens, like every time. I won't make you guys move today. I won't bite you. So yeah, Danielle Schutz. I'm a Colorado native. I actually grew up in Colorado Springs. Went to CU Denver here, so that's when I moved up to Denver. Graduated from CU Denver. I have a business degree. I actually didn't think that I would go into finance. Hopefully you guys got a little bit of my bio in advance, so I won't bore you to death with that, and then we'll get into the juicy stuff in this conversation. But didn't think I'd go into finance. I'm a bit of a finance unicorn, so I say I'm like a finance person with a marketer's brain. So a bit of a strategist, not a great accountant, so I surround myself with great accountants so that I can be good at my job. And I was in a work-study program when I was in college at a nonprofit organization for inner-city youth here in Denver. And at the time, they got a big federal grant, and nobody knew how to manage federal money, which is kind of part finance, part lawyer, which is me in a nutshell. And I said, I'll teach myself how to do that so that I could get extra hours to get my 14 bucks an hour or whatever I was making for my work-study credits. And so I ended up teaching myself how to manage federal money, and ended up managing their full budget for 3 years while I was in school. And so by the time I graduated, I had a resume full of finance. So it made perfect sense that I would go not into public relations, which is what I thought I would do, but into finance because I needed a job. And I had a resume that would get me one job. And so I did that. I was a financial analyst at Denver Health for 2 years. I managed grants and contracts. And I worked a lot with the state health department at the time. And so after about 2 years, they recruited me over to the state health department. And at the tender age of 26, I became the chief fiscal officer for the prevention services of the state health department. And I'll pause there to just let you know I was really bad at that job for the first 6 months. I mean, horrible. I went, overnight kind of went from being an individual contributor who was rewarded for my technical skills as a finance professional to having a team of 27. Most of them had been at the health department longer than I'd been alive. Had kids older than me, and they just thought this was an absolute experiment. Like they were just waiting for Ashton Kutcher to pop out and be like, "You're being punked with the little girl." And I really didn't understand leadership. I didn't understand who I was supposed to be as their leader. I was working 16 hours a day, which is a sign, right, that you're not probably being your best leader self. If you have a team of 30 people, but you still have to do 16 hours of work every day. And I remember thinking, I'm definitely going to get fired, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go down being myself. And I remember walking into work and saying to this team, man, I am not doing this well. And I need your help. I just need your help. And they were like, well, thank God somebody says it. We've been telling HR on you for the last 3 months. So we're so glad that somebody finally admitted that you don't know what you're doing as a leader. And I think that bit of vulnerability really broke walls down, and they really did rally around me and taught me about myself from that day forward, and then also helped me fall in love with leadership and understanding, what the difference is, and understanding the importance of being a technical leader and being as good at it as you are your job. And to this day, if I'm doing something, I have a job opportunity, I call that team, that group of people. Many of them have retired, and I have a group of mentors. So I did that for 4 years, and then I said, I don't think government is going to be my jam for the rest of my career, for many reasons. Happy to explain that to you if you want to know. And I had a mentor who was the CFO of the West Division of Comcast at the time, named Tim Nestor, and he's still with Comcast. He has a much bigger job. now, if that's possible. And he said, come on over, like come over to corporate. You really should get some forecasting and projections in your resume. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take this leap for industries. And I went over as a manager of FP&A, financial planning and analysis, and that was the first time in my career where people thought I was absolutely insane. Wait, you're going to be you're a CFO, you're going to go be a manager, you're going to have 27 employees, you're going to go have 1 employee. What are you doing? Like, that makes no sense. You could retire at 40 and get your salary for the rest of your life, and none of that was in my goal set. So I made that leap. I did that job for a year. I was promoted to director of FP&A, so I managed the forecast for the entire West Division of Comcast, about a $15 billion forecast that we did monthly. And then I did that for about a year, and I was promoted to vice president of finance and business operations for the West Division. I had teams in 7 states, team of 60, and so I traveled a lot. Last year I traveled 70% of my time. My role was new. I was basically the construction CFO. And so this division was the only one that had a construction CFO. I managed a capital portfolio. And the company said, man, we love this position. This position's really important to the company, but we only want one of you. We're not going to hire him in the other divisions. Do you want to move to Philadelphia? And so they said, you have a year to decide. So last year in October, I told them, I don't want to move to Philadelphia. And there was a lot of stuff that goes into that, and we can get into that too, but I decided not to move to Philadelphia. They asked me to stay until earlier this year, which I did. So I left Comcast earlier this year after a couple years of doing that job. Last year, I started a blog, and that blog kind of blew up on me. Like, a lot of people started reading it. I talk a lot about career, especially for emerging leaders or people looking to switch industries, or all this crazy stuff that has happened in my career, trying to share that advice. And so I think a lot of people really liked that. And so then we monetized the blog and started a digital leadership coaching platform called The Daily Boss Up. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary on Sunday. Yeah, and then last week I started as the vice president and chief financial officer for the Colorado Trust here in Denver. So that's where I'm at now.
Round of applause for all of that.
You get good at saying that, right?
So it sounds like with your multitude of roles, you've obviously had 0 challenges. No, but I'd like to hear, so what are some of the common challenges or things that you face, either I'd say like intersectionality-wise, given like your identity, or just you as an individual? What are some things that were kind of common? How did you deal with those?
So you can pick your poison, but I'm a young woman of color. And I think that is at the forefront of everything that I do when I step into a room. And I'm in finance, right? I walk into rooms and nobody looks like me. Nobody is my race, and nobody is my gender, and certainly nobody is my age. I was the youngest CFO in the state health department's history. I was the youngest vice president in all of Comcast Cable, which is a gigantic organization, I'm sure you all know. And depending on the day or the point in my career, one of those things plagued me more than others. At the beginning of my career, I really struggled with being the youngest. And the piece of my story that's the most important piece of my story is that I had my son Kai when I was 16 years old. So I wasn't just the youngest executive in the room, I was just the youngest in every aspect of my life, which was really a shame that I carried. And I think when you are different than the rooms that you step into, you tend to carry those differences as a shame, unless you can really train yourself to love those pieces of your identity and understand what sets you apart. And so that's a challenge, because you go into work and you aren't being your most authentic self, right? I wasn't talking about having a first grader because I didn't want people to do the math. I mean, like, what mom can't go to school and say, my kid started first grade today, and share that with the people that you spend 9-10 hours a day with, right? And that was really a challenge for me. That was why I was a bad leader, because if you aren't being as authentic as you can, leadership is going to be really hard for you. It's hard. Leadership is hard anyway. And if you aren't being your authentic self and leading in a way that makes sense to you, then you will really struggle. And I struggle, and I still struggle, because there's a balance to authenticity and safety in systems that weren't necessarily built to make you feel safe, whatever it is that's making you feel different, right? And I'm not talking about anyone's intention for me, I'm just talking about the systems that I operate in, right? And so feeling safe but also feeling authentic, and that balance that I'm having to strike every day on how much do you share. But when I started to own my story, I think that's when this started to knock down for me, right? When I went to work and said, well, they're gonna fire me anyway, so I might as well just do it my way. That's actually what turned the ship, right? And I think that's what I try to remember all the time. And then I also think about, you know, being a teen mom has given me some skill sets in my career that if I don't own, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? So people will always say, Danielle, you're very laid back. And money people aren't laid back. I don't know if there's money people in the room, but like we get really freaked out about every dollar, right? You know, we missed that. We missed the forecast, and people say you're laid back. I don't have a laid back personality, actually. I'm not a laid back person. I'm a bit type A and all those things you can imagine. What they're seeing in me is that nothing that happens at work is as hard as what I've already been through, right? And so being 16 and pregnant is the hardest thing I've been through my whole life. Nothing could compare to that. Like, it couldn't even get close. So when I come to work, I sort of say, hey, we can do this, or I'll be fine, or we'll be fine, or I'll tackle this. And I remind myself when all the challenges happen that, like, you've already overcome something that's so difficult, and give yourself credit for that when you're looking forward, and owning your story and owning this authentic piece of who I am, I think, is how I deal with the challenges. And then also just acknowledging that they're very real for all of us. These are real challenges. It feels more safe when you walk into a room and you see people that look like you. That's human in all of us. And it feels less safe when you don't think that people could relate to you. And so I think that's a challenge that I face every day, and try to figure out what can people relate to me, if not externally so obvious. Yeah.
I guess what would some advice that you would give to individuals in the room who may be either struggling or, you know, relating to you in similar aspects, whether it be the past or current? Yeah. What kind of advice would you give them?
So it's interesting. I think if you're a young professional, it's interesting how everyone believes that it's their job to give you feedback. Sometimes if you're a woman, everyone thinks it's their job to give you feedback. If you're a person of color, everyone thinks it's their job to give you feedback. And feedback is a gift, except for if you don't know yourself very well and you're getting bombarded with feedback and you can't filter through it. And so some of the best advice someone gave me, I was getting some feedback like, she's not very collaborative. And I was struggling with that, right? Because I didn't identify with that feedback. I considered myself a very collaborative person. I was trying to fix it, but I didn't really know what was broken. And I remember a mentor of mine said, that's not even real about you. Like, why are you spending any energy on what's not real about you? And I think that was so groundbreaking for me in my career, and being able to kind of wade through the noise of all the feedback that might be coming in. What I'm not saying is go around telling people, just take me as I am. That doesn't work well. It might work for a little bit. It doesn't work for long sustainability in your career, because you should be growing as a person. God help us all when we're in an environment where people, especially our leaders, aren't working on themselves. So you have to know yourself really well. So really, if you're not spending time like, what am I good at? What am I not good at? Like, how do I come off to people? So that you can ground yourself in what feedback is real, and that creates a protection for you. Like, if you say, Danielle, you're impatient, I don't get defensive, because that's true. Like, that's real about my personality, right? Like, it's not because I'm a woman they're saying it. It's not because I'm a person of color. It's not because I'm young. It's because I actually am a very impatient person, and I have to work on it, right? If they say I'm not collaborative, that's not real. I don't take it home with me. I don't go to bed with that over-analysis of something in my head that I just doesn't feel real to my person anymore. But I really had to learn who I was, which means really surrounding yourself with people who tell you about yourself because they love you, not because they want to hurt you in any way. And so I think that's my advice. If you want to be authentic, you can only be authentic if you know who you are. And so that's the first step in addressing these challenges and surrounding yourself in a cocoon of safety in that you know who you are, you know what you're working on, so when someone else tells you to work on it, you don't immediately get defensive, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I guess with the feedback that you received and, you know, ultimately growing as an individual, how did that play into you starting the Daily Boss Up, or I guess even for the audience, giving them a quick summary of, you know, what the Daily Boss Up is and then how you went about starting it and things of that nature?
So I think we have this really bad habit of giving people coaching on who they are and helping people learn who they are and start coaching them in leadership like the day after we give them a team of 27 people, right? That's what happened to me, where it's like, uh-oh, like, you know, go on the football field and then we'll start coaching you, right? And that's how it feels, like you're getting actually tackled, right, every day. If you care at all about being a good leader, it's gonna feel like, and so I think for me, the Daily Boss Up, I'm a big journaler, so dating back to being 15 years old, I have journals, and I have these career journals of like every hard day and every great day and every time I broke through with an employee and what did we talk about, to sort of, I was kind of trying to coach myself through the leadership process. And as I have grown my career and have more people that ask for advice, I see these themes. And it really is about learning who you are and, you know, how do you coach people in sort of understanding who they are and their strengths and their weaknesses in a way that doesn't make people defensive, and then how do you apply that like in your career to really be successful. And so that's where the Daily Boss Up came from, and it's every single day we send you a leadership or life tip or trick. Like this week's theme is procrastination, and so we hit you, you know, we hit you, myself, right? I write the content like well in advance, so then by the time I get the text I'm like, ooh, that's too real. That's too real for the day. And it all comes from like these lessons that I've learned thus far in my career. I have a lot of career left and a lot more lessons to learn, and it really is for folks to be able to start coaching themselves, start a career journal, have a tribe. I call us a tribe of folks to talk to, and it's affordable because executive coaching is not affordable, and they don't usually give it to you until you're an executive and it's too late. And I would rather hire people who have spent 5 minutes a day thinking about if they're a procrastinator or not than people who've never even, oh shoot, do I do that? And so it's a subscription-based business. It's $8 a month, and you get all of this content delivered right to where we all are today, which is in our phone. So that's the Daily Boss Up.
Awesome. With that, what was the most exciting part about, you know, starting your own company, and then what was sort of the most challenging part of starting that?
The most exciting part is that it's a company started from my passion to share anything I can with anyone who wants to hear it. Like, hey, don't make this mistake. You know, like I think that's, you know, the things we go through in life really matter when you can share them with someone else or help someone else from doing the same thing. And I love that. I love that I get to do that. I feel very blessed. So to have a business where I'm doing that is just so cool, the things I hear from people and the feedback. So that's been the best part, when you know you're sort of walking in purpose. And then the hardest part is all of the rest of it. I just never, you know, I never considered myself an entrepreneur, and I'm a great strategist, but the thing that surprises me the most, or surprised me the most, especially once I left Comcast, was like the self-motivation part of entrepreneurship, and like, get your butt up and do 9 hours of work, girl. Like, no, you're not going to a yoga class in the middle of the day and all that stuff they say, like, oh, it's great, you're an entrepreneur. Like, that works when you're not in the middle of startup mode and you're doing so many things and you're in the detail of the operations. And it's much more difficult than I thought it would be. And as soon as I was making enough money to hire people to do that for me again, I did. Because I recognized my strengths and where they are no longer lie, which is in like the details of technical operations of a company, or like being all over that. So I've got some great folks that work in that space for me. So yeah, I think structure, self-motivation, like you don't have a team of people around you telling you not to quit, or when you have a day that's hard, like don't ever underestimate like how awesome it is if you are a part of a great work culture or family. Like I missed that very much. It's part of why I decided to take the CFO role. Even though I have this business running, is because I missed it very much, and I think I'm too early in my career to give it up, quite frankly. Like, I need it, but that's another piece that I learned about myself by trying something new. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess guess speaking to that, you're describing various roles that you've been a part of, but also your son as well.
Yeah.
How is work-life balance between work, life, and then family, of course?
This is my favorite question because I have no answer for it still. So I have 2 kiddos, and so my son is a senior this year, which is insane. And then my daughter's in 7th grade. And balance. So how do I find balance? I don't. All I do is redefine it for myself so that I can stop beating myself up. So balance is like the word normal. Like, what does it actually mean, right? When you're like, oh, that's not normal. Well, what does normal mean, right? What does balance mean? And I think for all of us, it's really different. And I think what happens is that we let outside forces define balance for us, and then we feel like we're failing. So I have some tricks. I'm not going to pretend that my schedule's easy. It's not. It's crazy. But I try to do whatever I'm doing. I try to do just that. I'm lying because I walked in, I was on a conference call, and she's going to be like, what are you talking about? No, I do try to do just that. So, when it's time with my kids, it's time with my kids. I don't have a problem putting my phone in a drawer. And I don't have quantity of hours with them, but I certainly have the quality of hours with my kids, and I pay attention to my environment. I'm not a multitasker. Society teaches us to do that, and I think it's an absolute waste of energy and brain power. And I try to really structure my day in a way where I do not try to be doing too many things at once. You won't see, if I'm having dinner with a girlfriend, you're not going to see me on my phone. If I'm in a meeting, you're not going to see me on my phone. If I need to be on my phone, I don't need to be in the meeting, right? So just really trying to understand where's my energy best placed, and then pay attention to your body, like when it comes to balance, right? Your body's going to tell you long before your mind is going to let you acknowledge that you're not in balance. Traveling 70% of my time last year, I had lost balance. I had lost my ability to stay healthy. I had lost my ability to have the energy to engage with people at the level I wanted to. I was just exhausted. And that was my first sign that something was off. And it wasn't society might have told me I didn't have balance 2 years before that, right? I felt fine at 30% travel. So I didn't care what people told me. But at 70, I knew I wasn't doing okay. And you just can't let outside forces define that for you. The other thing, especially my ladies in this room, ask for help. If there's things I'm bad at, or I'm not good at, or I hate doing, I let other people do them. I really just let other people do them at work and in my life, and I still call my mom when I just hit a wall. Find that, ask for help. We're taught that we're supposed to do it all. I don't do it all. That's insanity. I'll never be a PTO mom. The PTO moms don't want me coming to the meeting talking about ROI, and I don't want to be there. And I think people are great at that. And why would, let them do that? Why would I make myself feel bad for not showing up to do something I would hate doing anyway? It just doesn't make a ton of sense. And then the other thing with balance is that most of it sits here. So stop talking to yourself in the way that you're talking to yourself, right? We talk to ourselves pretty horribly. As humans, we wouldn't even talk to our worst enemies the way we talk to ourselves. Why can't you figure it out? And you dropped another ball, and just tell that committee that is constantly telling you you're out of balance just to shut up. Sit down. We're not taking any more opinions about our balance today. Everybody's alive. I ate once or twice today. Small wins, celebrate the victories. Talk to yourself differently, right? Dang, my outfit's good. Boom, if that's all I do today, I'm all right. Or whatever you need to do to sort of talk to yourself in a positive way, because balance is super fictitious, and it sits in our minds, and it sits in a societal structure that I think has us be really hard on ourselves and chasing things that aren't real. So it's all self-preservation, and that all starts up here, I think, when it comes to balance.
Awesome.
I gave you no tips on balance at all. So. Literally, just screw it and do you. That's my tip.
I learned to speak back to the committee.
Yeah, speak back to that committee, right?
Committee.
Everybody's got an opinion in your head.
Yeah.
There's 4 chairs.
With that, you did mention also making sure that you have individuals that will be real with you and give you criticism out of love and not because they want to hurt you.
Yeah.
So could you talk to us about how mentorship and or sponsorship has played a role in your career, and even if you want to highlight some of those mentors or sponsors who have helped you along the way?
Right. Your network is your net worth. So if you're trying to get somewhere and you don't have a lot of people that understand that vision and are trying to help you get there, it's going to be really, 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 really hard. And I have, really made sure that a lot of my time is spent building networks and mentoring people and being mentored. I have many mentors in my life, meeting with one of them at 3 o'clock today. I would just encourage everyone, because mentors, are people that can sort of help you work through the you stuff, like the soul work of our careers, and we forget that. We leave that stuff behind. Sponsors are people like a Tim Nestor, who I didn't sit and have coffee with, once a month in a traditional way. He's someone that said, oh, you're ready to move, you're ready to do something different, I'll pick up the phone, right? And I'm a sponsor for some people and will pick up the phone, and I have monthly coffee meetings with some people. And when people email me because they saw something on LinkedIn and said, I just want to have coffee, I just want to pick your brain, I go every time. It might take 2 months for us to get it on the calendar, but I go every time, because it's not just about them, it's about me. Like, I love meeting new people. I want to have someone, oh, you do social media content? Like, that has been huge. To meet a young lady who worked at DU, had coffee with her, she graduated, she's a social media analyst, she's killing it for me in the Boss Up, right? Like, being able to hire someone that's gonna help me make money and do things I'm not good at because we had a coffee meeting that I took, right? And she thought it was for her, but it's as much for me as possible. So if you don't have time, or you're not making time for that, and I would branch out of your industry, I would branch out of the familiar, make yourself uncomfortable a little bit, because that's probably where good stuff is going to happen, and pick somebody's brain. And then I would just say, if you are going to do that, just be clear about what it is you're working for. If you're going to ask someone to spend their time, you are the driver, you are the leader of that relationship as the mentee, and being clear, like, man, I have really struggled with, breaking into leadership. I've applied for 3 jobs and I just don't know, or I honestly don't know if I'm doing a good job or bad job. Be specific, right, about what it is that you're driving. Maybe it's your personal life, maybe it's balance, like you just feel whacked and you want to sit with somebody who can help you sort of get the committee out of your head, and help you really understand that you're not whacked, you're fine, or to help you reprioritize. Just be specific about who it is that is going to help you and why you chose that person. And it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be a program. It doesn't have to be, we meet every month. It can be just someone who you're like, I really just want to pick up the phone and chat with you right now. And do it. Like, make time. If you're trying to grow your career and you don't have a slate of people that are helping you do it, like, that's step 1. Not applying for the job. Applying for a new job or applying for the promotion is not step 1. Step 1 is, let me get 3 or 4 people who understand this is where I'm headed, and they're going to help me get there. That's the best investment of your time if you're trying to grow your career. It's in having a committee of people outside of your head that are helping you get there.
Wonderful. The next question I would ask is a little bit of a lighter one, but what brings you joy in life?
Woo! Man, that is such a good question. Obviously, I'll give you some of the obvious answers, which is my kids, but specifically, my perspective on life is very interesting. So I'm a joyful person, and this is why. When I went to college, and I remember, like, writing in my journal, what are your goals? When you graduate from college, what are your goals? And my goal was to not be on public assistance. Like, I wanted to take care of my son by myself. And I never have lost sight of that was the goal. And so give me the big titles if you want to, and give me whatever, like, everything else has been amazing, and I'm driven, and I'm grateful, and I love that my career has taken the twists and turns, and I'm still pinch myself about where I am, but not because somebody calls me a vice president or a CFO, or because I get to sit up here, it's because I achieved a goal that I had for myself. And so whatever happens now, I can be really easy on myself about it, right? So if I get fired and I'm an out of work executive, those are words I never thought I would say about myself. Like, oh, I've got to go find a new job, I mean, if you have perspective on where you've come and what you really wanted to be when you were 15 or 16 and how simple it was, and the fact that you've probably knocked that out of the park by I know you have because you're sitting in this room, right? Like, I am just joyful. Like, I'm just joyful about opportunities that I get to have, like watching my kids and like who they've become. My son's gonna go to School of Mines and become a chemical engineer. Like, when you realize you're saying words that you never thought you would say every day, and that's just your life now, like, how can you not be grateful and joyful? So I think probably just in general, I'm a pretty joyful person because I'm incredibly grateful to be anywhere I am during the day, and I don't let myself not sit and pause in that, and that brings me a lot of joy to go, whoa, yeah, like, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool day that I just had, and I never thought I would have it, and you're all there. Like, I don't care what your titles are. If you look back on your journey, there's a lot of joy to be had. And then, of course, my kids, like, just bring me immense joy. They're very different people than each other, and that's pretty cool, like, to watch. My daughter's very different than me, like, so that's really cool. Like, my son's an old soul like me, but my daughter is, like, plays with toys and stuff, which I never did. So I literally can stare and watch her, like, play with Barbies because it's just such a cool thing. Like, she's such a kid. And then, my love language is quality time. So I think when I get to sit down with my girlfriends who are extremely badass and just have a meal and some wine, like, that's a good night for me. Like, that's a night that usually gives me energy for the next 2 weeks, or I get to have a cool conversation with somebody. That gives me a lot of joy too. I know I'm supposed to tell you about all these hobbies I have. I'm not going to lie and pretend that I do have a bunch of hobbies outside of working and being a mom and all of that, but I enjoy just life in general. I'm grateful for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With that, I guess, what is your vision for yourself in 5 to 10 years from now? Where are you aiming for now, if you're allowed to tell us? My
second favorite question, because I don't answer this one well either. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Steve White, who's the president of the West Division of Comcast. He's an amazing human being. And when I was interviewing for the vice president role, like, we call him a robot. He's a planful guy. Like, you're supposed to know exactly what you're doing and where you're going. And everyone prepared me. Like, Danielle, you got to tell Steve what you want to be doing at Comcast in 5 years from now. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to nail it. So he asked me the question, and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to have an answer for you, but here's where I struggle. So I think people probably assume I'm very like, oh, you have all these very rigid goals, and you know exactly what you want to do, and you know exactly where you're going to be. It's just false. I just am finishing my book, and it's called A Life Unplanned, and this is because I'm very open to the opportunities as they come, and I don't talk myself out of taking what might feel right, even when I'm really scared of it. And the reason I can't tell you exactly where I'll be, certainly 10 years, like, that's insane to me. Like, I'm not even gonna pretend to try to answer that. But I think I started answering the question, like, who do I wanna be in 5 years? And that's what I said to Steve. Like, Steve, I don't know what title I will have in this company, or even like if I'll be in finance or in customer experience, or, but what I know is that I love to be in the thing that's hard. So whatever's on fire in this company in 5 years from now, you can probably put me over there. Or wherever there's a problem that nobody can figure out how to solve, like, let me be a part of that. And then give me whatever title matches that, because then I'll be enjoying my work. And I promise you, if you answer like that in an interview, you'll knock them dead, which is that, like, I don't know exactly where I'll be in 5 years, but I hope to be doing a lot of coaching of folks. I hope to still be doing a lot of speaking in 5 years. That's something that lights me up, makes me feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do, or like that everything I've been through matters. So I want to keep doing that. That makes me happy. I hope to be traveling for fun as much as I do for work in 5 years. I hope to be growing people's careers, so hopefully I'll have a big team under me. So that's how I answer the question. Like, I hope, I know how I want to be spending my days. I don't know if it'll be at the trust. I don't know if it'll be like on my own. You know, maybe the boss up will be too big, and so I try not to put too much detail on it, because then sometimes when the detail doesn't happen the way you thought it would, you think it's time to quit. I always say this, like, set goals and then be really flexible with the plan, right? Be really flexible with the plan, because the reason things fail is not because it wasn't a good idea or you weren't putting enough hard work into it. It's because somebody thought, uh-oh, my plan changed. That means the goal is no longer attainable. Like, if your goal is to go to Miami and you want to be there next Tuesday, that's what you've said. Like, my goal is I want to go to Miami. And you book your flight and you're going to go on Tuesday and you're going to go at 10 a.m. The 10 a.m. stuff and the flight and being there by Tuesday is the plan. It's not the goal. What's going to happen is your flight's going to get canceled. You're going to be stuck in Missouri for 3 days. If you're from Missouri, I'm sure it's a great place. I've never been there. I'm sure it's a beautiful place, I'm sure. But that's not where you wanted to be, right? So you're mad, and you're in Missouri, and you're like, man, why? Like, I'm just going to go back home. Like, I'm not supposed to be in Missouri. I'm supposed to be in Miami. I'm just going to go back home. Well, that's where everybody else, or 99% of people, quit. What I'm telling you is that everybody who's successful spends time in Missouri, and they get to Miami days, weeks, months, or years after they planned to. And this is coming from someone who is 33 years old right now and has had the career I have had. There's still been so many days in Missouri. And if you can think about Missouri in a different way, where you just say to yourself, what the heck am I supposed to learn here? Like, maybe you're supposed to learn how to cook, or you go out and you go on a little tour of Missouri. What's a city in Missouri? I need to come, like St. Louis? That's the big one, right? Yeah. You go on a tour of St. Louis and you see something that inspires you, or you talk to somebody at a restaurant that changes your life. That means you were meant to be in Missouri, and then in a few days from now, you pick up and you go to Miami. And now you go with a whole new toolbox or a whole new thing that you learned. And I have become my best self, and the new things I've added have always been in the moments where I'm getting the tar kicked out of me, to be honest. It's not when everything's perfect and I'm good and the big announcements have come out. It's not this week when the trust did the press release. It's in 8 weeks from now where I'm realizing, ooh, I got something to learn here that I wasn't expecting to learn, and it's really hard, and I'm tired, and I'm not sure I'm going to be good at it, or I've got a staff member who's really rough. So what do I do about it? That's like, those are the moments in Missouri where actually that's where I've developed and become good. So set goals and be unapologetic about getting to Miami, and then just be like, I might be on the Greyhound bus. Like, that's not what I want. But if I'm still headed towards Miami, this Greyhound bus is a part of what I'm supposed to have in my tool set. So in 5 years from now, hopefully I'll be in Miami.
Don't forget any
like
of us.
Figuratively and for real, because it's a great place.
Well, yeah, don't forget any of us.
I will not.
If you're in Missouri, please stop by.
Yeah, if I'm in Missouri, I'm going to call some folks that I meet today, I'm sure, and say, how the heck do I get out of here, And you guys will help me.
I think before we maybe open it up to the floor for like 1 or 2 questions, just, maybe some final piece of advice from yours, some semi-closing words about how awesome you are, things that everybody can take away from here today.
Final closing advice. First of all, just thanks for having me, because like I said, I just am eternally grateful for these opportunities, and just feeds my soul to get to do it, and I'm glad you guys came. And maybe they offered you food or the rest of the day off or whatever, but I don't care. Here's what I'd say. I honestly just think the world would be a much better place if people stopped talking themselves out of their greatness every day. So if you take one thing from me, it's that whatever you're facing, you are probably a lot of the reason why you're facing it, in the way that you're communicating with yourself, which is great news, because with a little help from the people that love you, you can get out of that space. which means you already have the tools that you need to do whatever it is that you want to do. And I think sometimes our culture teaches us to leave who we really are at the door when we come to work. Stop doing that. Please stop doing that. And please especially stop doing that if you have a team under you. Like, bring yourself to work and tell people who you are, because I promise you, if you're not, they're filling in the gaps. And it's human nature to be very negative, especially about our leaders, and especially if they leave a lot of space for us to decide who they are, because they're not sharing it, and they're not sharing when they have a bad day, and they're not sharing when they have a good day. And I promise you, before you started a day of work in your life, you already had so many skills that you are leaving at home because somebody told you you're not supposed to bring your personal journey with you. And I am here because I'm a teen mom, not in spite of it. And so what is it in your journey that you should be unpacking and sharing and using as the rocket fuel in your career? And if you're in an environment who's not accepting that of you, then you have your answer. Because you really should bring your whole self to work as much as you can, and start sharing those things that you've been through. By the time you hit college, you've been through something so hard that nothing that happens in this building is going to compare. We all have stories like that. What is yours? Figure it out. If you really don't have one, you can use mine. You'll never be 16 and pregnant again. Just say it to yourself. If you got nothing else, say that to yourself in a moment, and it's just perspective to just get out of your head. Like, you're okay. Like, you're already good. You already have so many skills to bring to work. And I'm not a financial technician anymore. My teams don't let me touch spreadsheets. Like, please don't. Danielle, don't touch that. You can probably figure it out, but it's going to take 9 hours, and nobody has time for that, right? Like, that's not what the value I bring anymore. And so if you're tying all your value up in these technical things, but not in who you are as a person and what you're going to bring to the table, it's going to be rough. Because eventually that's not going to be what matters in your career, and helping other people grow their career. If you haven't figured out how you will do that, like what you would bring to the table, that's a place to start. And then start with what you've been through, because that stuff all matters, and you should celebrate yourself for getting to where you are today. And then I guess my final thing is perspective. Like, what amazing things have you accomplished in your life, and things that you've been through that are really hard. Like, I always say, if you're married, I got divorced last year. He's my great friend. But if you're married, you're already navigating the most difficult human relationship in life, right? And then we don't ever think about that. We go to work and we have this horrible boss, and we're like, this is the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. I'm like, really? Like, you're married. Like, you are already, like, you are already, and even the best of marriage requires so much human sacrifice, right? So much, let me meet you where you are. Let me figure out what I love about this person, even though they drive me crazy in the following 112 ways, right? Like, if you are married, then you already know, or if you're in a relationship with someone and you live in the same house, you got some skills. You got some relationship skills to bring to the table with a tough boss. Like, change your perspective. Like, readjust the filter of life and realize that, like, give yourself some credit. Like, I think you can manage a tough boss, because, like, they're going away tomorrow. Like, come on, one thing I can promise is you're going to have a different boss one day, right? And, like, figure out how to navigate that relation, and watch as that person becomes your greatest ally. Watch as that person teaches you stuff about yourself, even if it's who you don't want to be as a leader, right? Just remember those things, and remember your perspective, and that you control it, and that you can control the filter at which you look at all this stuff. And as you go through your career and your life, like, it's all one big thing that you can manage if you give yourself a break. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess round of applause for that. Yeah, I think we can quickly take some questions for those of you that have meetings at 1. It's 12:53 right now, so 12:54 actually, just turned. But yeah, just keep cognizant of that. But yeah, happy to take some questions from the audience.
Wow, mic and all. You talked a lot about having...
Will you stand up for me? I'm sorry.
Sure. You talked so much about having a mentor and sponsors, and where do you find these people? Where are you, like, you somebody I want to have a cup of coffee with, and how do you not do that in an awkward way? Because I feel like I'd be that awkward person that would.
It's always awkward, so you just accept that it's going to be awkward. First, that's the first things first. It's awkward. It's awkward for me. It's awkward for the person who asked. I'm like, who am I going to meet? And are they a serial killer? It's all good. We meet in a public place. It's going to be fine. So it is awkward. So I'm not. That's okay, right? Like that. Don't talk yourself out of it because it's awkward. Like doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're human. And cold calling people is not fun. If you are not involved in community in some way, I would suggest doing it. I've been on nonprofit boards since I was 19 years old. And almost every mentor that's still in my life today came from being on a nonprofit board, not work. And these people know if you think about philanthropy and the type of people that sit on boards, that's a great place to tap into some mentorship. And they have really helped. I met Tim Nestor at a fundraiser, at a community event, because we had a mutual friend on a board. And so you just never know where you're going to meet people, and that's why I say making sure that you invest your time in that and in building your network. And there's so many nonprofits in Denver, like whatever you're passionate about, like call them up. They're looking for women. They're looking for people of color. They're like all these boards, like get on one of them. And I promise you'll get a mentor or two out of that. And then use the heck out of LinkedIn. Like that's where all my cold calls come from. Like people will just say, hey, do you want to have coffee? And I'll say, yep, here's my email. Let's get it on the calendar. And I don't know anybody. I have so many amazing leaders in my life, and I don't know any of them that would say no. They all do the very same thing. So just stop beating yourself up for it being awkward. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. And that's what we do, right? Well, I'm awkward, so I shouldn't even do this. I hate it. It's uncomfortable. No, that's like what you're supposed to do. And mentors come from the craziest places that you can think about, so get involved in stuff outside of work. And those will be long-term, sustainable mentorships. And you can start on LinkedIn if someone's working for an organization that you think is cool or you want to learn more about. Hey, I want to learn more about your organization. I'm really passionate about dogs, or, it's Colorado, so I'm really passionate about dogs. I don't have any pets. I can barely keep the three of us alive. But if that's your thing, right, just go on LinkedIn, look for Dumb Friends League. Who's an executive there? Boom. I want to learn more about the Dumb Friends League, how I can volunteer on a Saturday this month. Can we have coffee?
Thank you.
I've been trying to figure out how to ask this question. You were young and pregnant at 16.
Yeah.
You're a woman of color. People have said terrible things to you.
They have.
How do you deal with that in the moment?
Wow, that's such a good question. I love it. I'm growing in how I deal with that in the moment. I wish I was quicker in the moment on understanding that someone has just slaughtered me, right? What I do is I turn around and then go home, and then I'm like, oh, like, yikes, like that was ugly, right? And then I sit and stir and don't sleep that night, right? So that's a real work in progress for me. But here's what I say to myself, which is just which mountain do you want to die on? And I think that is for me just at the state I used to fight every battle, every weird thing that someone said, every microaggression, whether it was about me or somebody else. And that's not our job. Guys, you don't have to own that, and it's great. If you're a warrior and you're good and you don't really care what the outcomes are, you're going to stand up every single time, that's good. But the thing you have to remember is that you got to protect your spirit. And if you spend too much of your energy on the things people say to you, people that don't even know you, and that you actually don't even value their opinion at all, but you go home and you don't sleep, that is not okay. I actually don't care what you think, but I didn't sleep last night, right? Wait, what, Danielle? That's not a good mountain for you to die on, right? And I sort of test myself this way, which is if me standing up for myself or someone else in a moment where I heard somebody say something terrible got me fired. And they send that letter when people get fired, they're going to spend more time with their family, and then the real story starts to circulate, right? And if that circulation of the story is something I would be proud of, then that's my mountain. she was fired, but she stood up and da-da-da-da, this is what she said. This is how she defended herself or the woman next to her. And I was proud of that story versus kind of like, well, that was kind of stupid. That wasn't worth it, Danielle. That's how I kind of gauge, like, is this moment worth it? And I really do make myself pause because I'm impatient and I will react. And so I make myself pause by just going through that little thing in my head, like, okay, is this my mountain? What would the letter say? Not my mountain. It's funny what percentage of the time it's not my mountain, not because I was worried about getting fired, but am I proud of why? Was it the right battle to pick? And then it's interesting how your spirit just gets calmer and you take less offense and you realize these people aren't my, you know, the circus is not mine, right? Like, not mine to be at this crazy circus all the time. So let clowns be clowns and don't fight every battle. That's about them, not you, which I try to remind myself of still. Other questions?
So I guess this question is for millennials. Right? So it's like it's the career speed thing, right? So it's
Yes.
like managing millennials. So you have someone who might show up to work one day right out of college and they'll say, "Hey, when do I get to become a manager?" And also on the other side of it, it's for us too, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, you want to be a director or a VP or whatever, and how have you managed being patient about that, and what's worked for you? And the advice you can share.
I haven't had to be patient with myself because my career has grown pretty fast, right? So then lots of people ask me, like, how'd you do that? And it's the opposite of what most people are doing, which is that I've never, ever, ever walked into a space and said, like, when am I going to be a manager? What I would do if you're managing someone who just is, like, ahead of themselves, and we all can do that, we can get ahead of ourselves, is help them understand, like, what is it that you actually want to be doing, like, with your time every day? Because it's fascinating when people answer that question. It usually is the opposite of management. And so really helping people work through, like, what is your day going to look like when you have a team? Why do you want to do that? And to really stop focusing on titles. Because what you're going to hear is, oh, I want flexibility. I want a voice. I want to have more power. I want to be able to make decisions. That's comical. The higher up I go in an organization, the less power I have, the more people in my actual day-to-day autonomy, the more people I have to ask before we actually do something, because now my decisions matter, like they affect a whole company. So you're really having to think about the more matrixed your world becomes. Like when I was a director of FP&A, I made a lot of daily decisions that I didn't have to run by anybody. But when I was a vice president, that just wasn't my reality anymore. And that's okay, right? Because I like collaboration, I like that. But making sure people understand that that's what they're getting themselves into with each of their career moves, and then really pushing people to say, okay, like what skills, not Excel, what skills have you been working on with yourself that are gonna make you a great manager of people? And what it's gonna do, and I am a millennial, if you guys have seen my TED Talk, very proud millennial. This is what I talk about in my TED Talk. I think what people are saying and don't have words for is like, I want to feel like I'm growing at work. Millennials, we want to be growing at work. Structural environments tell us that that's a title thing. It's a title thing, it's a money thing, it's a I'm going to manage people thing, because then I get to be in charge of something. And so really understanding how do you grow people without it always having to do with titles, because I promise you, if you start investing in, oh, well, I need to be better at time management or creating vision, or I'm not that great at strategy yet. Well, you need to be a great strategist if you're gonna have a team, right? So how do we invest in that in you and watch as they sort of go, okay, like I'm headed towards my goal. And it's really about how are you investing in that progression, in my opinion, that I just don't think we've given folks good words for. So everyone just says, I just want to get the promotion, because then it feels like I'm progressing towards something. I've gone way backwards in title, as I've shared, in order to progress forward. But it was for a reason, right? Like I was actually growing something and a skill set in my career that I wanted to grow and have some new industry experience, and it didn't matter what the title was, but I had people help me see that. So that's what I would suggest, and like actually try to understand what people are actually asking you when they say I want to be a manager. Like, okay, what does that mean you want to do with your time? What does that mean you want to be doing from a skill set perspective? What skills do you want to be utilizing every day? And then you, if you're a millennial or not a millennial and you feel this way, you need to be asking yourself that same question. Because I think it's quite alarming that the very things you think you will gain by getting leadership roles could be the things you will lose. And so is that going to be worth it? Flexibility, getting to work from home, stuff like that. If you really value that, don't become a vice president. Like, you don't get to work. You're not going to be at home because you're not doing technical stuff every day, right? You're in meetings and you're working with your team and you need to have your office open and you need to be answering questions. And so if you hate doing stuff like that, tease that out in yourself. It has nothing to do with your title. Other questions? Or are we at time?
We have a question online.
Okay. Awesome.
For those of you wondering, we did get the live stream
Woo!
fixed. I know, thank you. All right, so last question. This is from Danielle. Have you ever considered going back to school, and do you find value in upper-level degrees versus experience?
Oh! I feel like however I answer this, it's going to be wrong. It's a great question. I don't, at this stage of my career, consider going back to school because it's diminishing returns for me. There's no role that I would be prohibited from getting because of my years of experience now. And I don't have a master's degree, and I also don't have a CPA. And I'm a CFO. So I think that's my journey. What I say about a bachelor's degree is to get it so that people can't use it against you. Like, don't give people a reason to say no to you, who too high a percentage of the time will say no. You're going to be in a pool of applicants and da-da-da. They're trying to figure out who to say no to. So if you need a bachelor's degree, I just think get that in whatever, because that is something that can preclude you from getting where you're going. And then I think the experience on boards and the experience in your community and the experience in life that you can articulate and put into a resume, for me as someone who's hired a lot of people, is always more important than whether somebody has a master's degree. But that's, we're all different because, I have a business administration degree, so that covers a lot of ground for me. Like, if you really want to do something specific, it might need a master's degree. I just know at this point, it wouldn't help me get anything that I could get without it, so I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't want to spend my time that way, but think about it in terms of your goals. And back to the whole plan and the goal thing, right? That's going to look different for everybody, so that's my best way to answer it. I don't want to discourage anyone from getting a master's degree because it's awesome and it's helpful. But it's also about where does it fit into your bigger, broader vision for yourself, and like, are you going to spend a bunch of money for no reason on a job you could have got by having a great mentor, and you should have spent your time that way, or a job you could have got by just connecting to that industry and learning it for a year. So just think about that if you're thinking about going back to school for anything above a bachelor's.
Awesome.
Is that it?
Yeah. Gets a round of applause.
Thanks for having me.